So, since you've learned about your some of your adoption history, what do you know about your life and circumstances before your adoption? Were you in an orphanage? Like, can you describe from what you remember or what you've read how that experience was for you?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. So I do remember my life in Russia before I got adopted. Um I was living in an orphanage. I got abandoned by my biological mother, and with that information I just found out recently as a few days ago. So living in Russia was really tough, particularly for me because I was the only black Russian in the orphanage that I lived in. Out of over 100 kids in this huge broken down building, there were no other kids that looked like me. There were no adults that looked like me. It was just me. So I stood out in the orphanage big time. Um, and the life in Russia was really tough due to the fact, yes, I was the only black kid, and the fact that I lived in a poor orphanage where there wasn't a lot of resources, like for school. We didn't go to school. Um, we didn't have resources for like having nutritious food. All I remember for food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner was oatmeal, bowl of oatmeal, and water. I don't even recall having milk. So we were always starving. I was really skinny to a point where like you can see my bones. So I was undernourished. My hair was orange from being undernourished, and there was not enough clothes to share amongst all the kids. So what happened was there were days where I even went about my day without having clothes and shoes on and just underwear just because there was not enough. But also, it was intentional to happen that way because in the mornings when we got up, um, the caregivers, whoever is in charge of that particular age group of kids, they would come and they would, decide what the kids would wear. So I was the always last one to get any clothes or shoes. So because I was the last one to get anything, they made sure that the kids got dressed okay, they had good shoes, good clothes. But for me, when it came to me, I always ended up with like clothes that had holes, that were dirty, and then shoes that were extremely small, didn't fit me, or I just didn't have shoes on. And it was intentional because I was the one that would get everything last. So for example, like with oatmeal, I would be the last one to get oatmeal, but I didn't get enough of oatmeal compared to the kids before me. So I was constantly being treated like I didn't deserve anything that other kids are receiving. And it was just the things that I dealt with. I do not ever wish on anybody, not even my enemies. I do not ever wish on anybody to experience the stuff that I experienced because I mean I survived, but I barely survived. And the things that I saw with my own eyes, the things that were happening to me without my consent, it was just horrible. I was always getting bullied because I was black. I was always being abused by the caregivers and even the older kids. So the older kids had some kind of authority. If they were anywhere between 16 to 18, they had some kind of authority where they would get away with the abuse that they were using towards me. And because I was being neglected in the orphanage by the caregivers, so that resulted in me being taken care of by the older kids, but I wasn't being taken care of. I was being used and abused. So it sucked. And then like the bigger kids, they had the authority to like go out of the orphanage and go to a corner store and get some snacks and soda. And I remember that because one of the things that they used for they gave me, like bribed me with, was soda and candy. It was like I was under a chokehold that I couldn't get out of. And the abusive methods that adults used were crazy. I still remember till this day where before dinner we went outside, and in the orphanage is surrounded by like broken down fence, right? But beside the orphanage, I don't know how to exactly explain. Beside the orphanage, there was a little house. And I never noticed it until that one particular evening where I saw it was me and this other kid, and we were just, playing together or talking, and we saw a lady behind the fence, and she was making dinner. She was making borscht, and borscht is a type of beet soup that has a lot of veggies, and you top it off with sour cream and dill. And you also can dip bread rolls. So in Russia, bread rolls are called pampushkas, and you slather butter on the pampushkas and some herbs on it, and you dip the pampushka into the borscht, and it is so delicious. So delicious. Everybody should try that one time. But anyways, she was making borscht, and she was telling us about how she's making borscht. Mind you, neither of us knew what it was because we were only eating oatmeal, but it smelled so good. And we were really curious, so we were just like, standing by the fence and talking to her because she was very sweet to us. Um so we saw bread from, her making bread, or she bought bread, and we saw bread and she offered us some bread. And because we said yes to the bread, because we took the bread from her, because we were eating the bread, we both got punished. For me, my punishment was really crazy. When we started walking with our mouths full of bread, we started walking, and one of the caregivers saw us, and they were asking us, "What's in your mouth?" And we were refusing to, tell them what's in our mouths. So I just started bawling, crying because I was so scared, and while chewing the bread. So I finally gave up, and I opened my mouth, and then they saw that we were chewing bread. Because that happened, that resulted in the boy and I getting punished, but our punishments were totally different. His punishment was like, "Oh, don't ever do that again. Don't take a bread from a stranger." My punishment was totally different. I saw a wooden lawn stick that one of the caregivers grabbed, and I didn't know what they were doing with it until I felt that against my ribs. So the first time I got striked with it, um, I was like, crying, and it was very painful, and I was just like in pain. The second time I got striked with it, I fell on the ground. The lady that was living by the orphanage, she was getting her dinner ready, and myself and the little kid that I was with, we saw her, so she started talking to us, and she was explaining to us that she's making dinner and she's making borscht. Now, mind you, I didn't know what borscht was back then because we weren't being fed that good. Because remember, we were just eating oatmeal. So to us, it sounded very foreign, but at the same time, it just sounded very good because it smelled so delicious. So she offered us some bread, and of course we didn't say no. Of course we took it, and of course we were eating it because we were starving, and she saw that we were starving. Like, everybody could see through us, just because we weren't getting fed enough. So I didn't realize that from me accepting a piece of bread from a stranger that was being so sweet to us would result me into getting hit and punished just because I was eating a piece of bread from a stranger. Now, what happened was it was time to go inside for dinner, and both myself and the boy, we stuffed the bread in our mouths, and we were chewing. So while we were chewing and we were getting like walking inside, one of the caregivers saw us chewing something. They were asking us like, "What are you chewing? What's in your mouth?" So I refused to like open my mouth or say anything. So she kept asking like, what do you have in your mouth?" So we finally opened our mouths. And the crazy thing about this whole thing is that our punishments were totally different from each other. So with the boy, they just said, "Don't do that again. This is your warning. Just don't do it again." But with me, I got striked. I got hit with this long wooden stick, and I got hit on my side of the ribs. And when I first got hit by it, I got scared, so I started crying because it was painful. When you're so skinny to a point where people can see your ribs and then you're getting hit by a wooden stick, it is extremely painful. It like felt like my ribs should have broken at that time. Um, so the first time I got hit, I started crying and just like, scared. The second time I got striked, I swear it felt like my ribs broke because it was like, I don't know, the pain was so hard to experience because I felt like sting, and then at the same time I felt sore. And when I looked at my side of the ribs, I had like a mark from the stick, a red mark that over time they bruised up. Um so that wasn't the only punishment I got. So when we went inside, people were eating at their tables, and I was told to sit at a table all by myself. So I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm going in timeout, whatever. This is nothing new." But instead of that, they were forcing me to eat a big bowl of bread. And it was a big bowl. Like think of a serving bowl, but a large serving bowl. And I had to eat the whole bowl of bread. And I couldn't finish it because it was like, I was full and I felt really, I don't know. I was just like, why are they doing this to me? And the crazy thing about it, I thought I was okay for this day. Like I could suck it up and deal with this. But it ended up lasting for a whole week. I had to eat a bowl of bread for a whole week. And people and the caregivers had the kids stand around me and watch me eat, and were like, telling me, "You have to eat this, you have to eat this. If you don't eat this, you're gonna stay here." And it was happening every single day. And during that time, I just wanted to curl up in a corner and just be left alone. So stuff like that, like the punishments were crazy. Like another thing that happened was I was probably like 6 or 7. I am not sure, but I recall like the event. So during bedtime, I was sleeping. So in the orphanage, there is a huge room, and maybe like 50 and up of beds just lined up against each other. And you can't really like leave the room. You have to like climb on the bed and stuff to get on the floor because that's how crowded it was. And during one of the nights, I wet my bed, and I was so scared to tell somebody that I have wet the bed. So what happened was I started crying in bed, and the caregivers, I guess, heard me cry, so they came to me and they were asking me like, "Why are you crying?" So I didn't say anything. So then they pulled off the blanket and they saw that I wet the bed. So the caregiver made me strip, and I was like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" So she made me strip, and then I had to go to a bathroom and I had to take a shower, but it was a cold shower. I was not allowed to use hot water at all, and there was no soap. So I had to stand under the shower head in cold water for 10 to 15 minutes. And they were telling me that this is the process of me getting clean. Now, it was extremely unfair because when another kid did the same thing, when they wet their bed, they were able to use the hot water, but I wasn't for some reason. So I was treated so unfairly just because they were able to get away with it. And it sucked because there are times where, like, there's a lot of stories I could go tell you and go on. But you are going to have to read my book that I'm working on. um, but anyways, like, the punishments were crazy. Like, there was a punishment of me, which I despise this one. A punishment of me being forced to eat a soap bar. Because I got in trouble for speaking out. I was telling one of the caregivers that, I'm dealing with something that I need to tell somebody, and I just didn't know how to tell them. So I was trying to tell them that, like, other older kids are, abusing me and doing this to me and that, and they didn't believe me. So because they thought I was lying to them, they were using the bar of soap for a punishment. So they forced me to eat the soap, and I couldn't, like, leave until I was finished eating the soap. And what I did, I would throw that soap out, and eventually over time they, like, really got tired of me puking and stuff and just left me alone with the soap.
I know that being from Russia, you came, to the United States with a Russian accent and spoke Russian. As you've gotten older, has it been difficult for you to keep your language? Has there been a barrier to how you interact with others? And do you wish that you were still able to speak and understand and read Russian?
When I was adopted and came to America, I was speaking Russian fluently, I was reading fluently, and I was writing Russian and fluent. And I think over time, while I was learning English, it caused me to lose my Russian language, which didn't bother me back then, but because I was so eager to learn in English. But I think as I got older, particularly recently, I think it does bother me a little bit in a sense of not fully speaking, because I would love, I don't know how this will happen, but I would love, and I believe it can, for me to get reconnected with my brother Germany. Because so shortly after I got adopted, I remember I would write to him in Russian, and he would write back to me in Russian. And that's how I was able to communicate with him. But I don't know, like, why the communication stopped, because it stopped very quickly after maybe like 2, 3 letters. This was shortly after I got adopted. So I do wish that I still speak Russian, but the cool thing about it is that I still understand part of it. So when I hear people speak, I'm like, oh, wait, they're speaking Russian. So it's like, I actually am trying to relearn the language right now. So just in case, like, I do get connected with Germany, I'm able to speak with him.
And because you were 9, like you were already going to be going to school. So was it difficult fitting in with your classmates due to any cultural differences? Like what kinds of things made it difficult for you?
Yeah, so with my Russian language, you are correct about me coming to America and speaking and writing and reading in Russian. That was the only language that I knew when I got adopted. There was a language barrier when I was going to school, just because a lot of people there spoke English. But I do want to say this. Um, I was eager to learn English as fast as I can, because let me tell you, I didn't understand anything that anybody was saying. So one of the ways that I learned English fast was I would mimic everybody. Whatever they said, I would repeat it. And that's how I was able to like learn and grasp on English language. But also I was a part of ESL program, English as a second language. And I will tell you, with being a part of that program, that helped me out so much. It was so good for me, and I was one of the kids that actually learned how to read fast in English. So, being a part of that program, I actually was teaching other kids how to speak and read in English because I was one of the fast learners in the program. So, it was pretty cool to be a part of that program. But one of the things, like I said, was repeating people on how to speak. Even with like being in the adopted family, it was hard to navigate, but at the same time, I was just, watching people speak, and I just took everything out of their mouths and just started repeating everything. Um, Even with like being in the adopted family, it was hard to navigate, but at the same time, I was just, watching people speak, and I just took everything out of their mouths and just started repeating everything. But it was a challenge, but I can tell you that I learned pretty quickly, I remember. Especially with like speaking and reading. With the writing part, I know I struggled with English writing part, but I eventually caught on to it.
As you grew up, like, were there any experiences or circumstances that made you not want to share that you were adopted? Did it make you feel out of place or just completely different?
Oh yeah, definitely. I felt like I was embarrassed to share that I was adopted for the longest. And the reason why is because it started off with the fact that I felt like I was not being loved, I was not being respected, and I was not being really taken care of by the person that adopted me and supposed to like take care of me because she came to the orphanage. She came to the orphanage several times to visit me, to spend time with me. So it seemed like back then she cared for me. She wanted me to have a better life than what I was, living in. But yet when she adopted me, it was a different story. And I felt like I was kind of betrayed because coming to America, I'm going to tell you this, I was so happy when I saw Brittany and Joy because they look like me. And I was like, oh my goodness, we have people here that look like me. I was so thankful when I saw them. I don't know what they thought when I when I was like so excited because my face showed it all, but anyways, I was extremely happy and excited to see that I was able to live with people that look like me and understand me. Um so I was really thankful for that, and but I think at the same time, I felt like I was betrayed by the mom that I was adopted by because in Russia, she acted like, she cared for me. She wanted me to have a better life. She loved me. She, wanted me to be happy. So I was really excited but nervous at the same time going to America for the first time. So when I got to America, I didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't know what was happening because it was a culture shock of me finding out that there are people that look like me, that there are different people out there too, not besides people that look like me, but different people, and that everybody is speaking, different languages and everybody has different backgrounds. So that was cool to experience. Coming to the family, I felt like I was accepted by Brittany and Joy and Andy because are the ones that actually, I don't know, for some reason they're the ones that actually really cared for me And I would always try to hang out with them no matter what they were doing. I could care less what they were doing. I just wanted to be around them. And Brittany can tell you that. She wanted to just be hanging out with her friends, be on the phone, but I was always there. I was just like her little magnet. And that is because I really loved the quality time that I was spending with, with Brittany, Joy, and Andy. Joy was um Joy is the one that started taking me like on field trips on the weekends. Like she took me to air shows, she took me to circus, she took me to parks. She was always taking me somewhere so I can have that experience of, finding new things and looking at new things, because I never saw any of that. I was never out of the orphanage. I was always inside the orphanage. So for me to experience all the fun with Joy, it was like a beautiful moment for me to bond with her. And she would like introduce me to foods that I never got introduced to in Russia. And then with Brittany, she was into art. So it was good to be around her because I was always drawing and I was always with her. And then I remember like she would do my hair every weekend, and I used to love that part because she would do my hair and it would take practically all day, um because tender-headed. And it took a couple hours, but it was good for me because it was a way of me bonding, and it was a way of me being out of trouble and just staying away from so-called brother that, abused me. So it was just a safe place for me to be around, part of. And Brittany, Joy, and Andy, they were my safe place until, Brittany got kicked out. Joy left, Andy left. So it's like once all three of them left, the family dynamic changed so much that I was honestly heartbroken. And people that were still in the house didn't understand exactly why I was so angry, why I was so sad, and I was just acting out all the time. But that's because Mom took a person and people out of my life that were my comfort zone, that were keeping me stable, that were nurturing to me, that were helping me and trying to help me understand myself and, just being a human being. So it was really hard. I was scared to share that I was adopted, especially at school, because when I started sharing that I was adopted, it was like, we all have bullies in schools at some point. And one of the things that bullies used to tell me is, haha, you don't have a real mom. Haha, you don't have a real family. So I would take that to heart because I would be like, dang, they're right. I don't have a real mom. And I used to believe everything that like kids would say. And I'm like, dang, I really don't have a mom. Like, yeah, I do, but then at the same time, I don't, because it doesn't feel like a mother and daughter relationship. It just feels like a person adopted me. They put clothes on my back and they fed me, but that's about it. I was seeking for way more than that. I was seeking for security. I was seeking for love and for the attention that I wanted. I wanted to know that people cared about me, and I just felt like I was not good enough and she did not care about me because I don't know. I was always in trouble. I was always a troublemaker in her eyes.
So, to conclude this episode, after learning about your history, where you come from, and how you grew up and how you experienced life in the United States, how do you feel about it? Like, what emotions, what things come to mind when you think about all the things that you've been through? From the time you was in Russia till you got adopted and spent a couple years in the United States.
That is a good question. Um I think I have so many different emotions, and one of them I do want to say I am extremely grateful for being adopted and for the things that I have experienced, like all the hard stuff from Russia and from living in the family, I think it made me um to be very patient with myself and to learn how to be patient with people, because I'm gonna tell you this. I have dealt with so much that you guys only just heard a little bit of. And um it's a bittersweet thing, because in Russia, like Russia, I was, I was unhappy. I was extremely unhappy. I was always sad and always in pain because of all the stuff I had to deal with, the abuse and the neglect. So then I get adopted, and I I get excited, and but then I was confused at the same time. But it's like I felt like I was betrayed in a sense, because when mom came to Russian orphanage to visit me, it seemed like she cared about me. It seemed like she wanted me to have a good life, and I was looking for that until I got to America, and I really started seeing what, you know, she was doing. Mind you, she worked hard. That woman worked hard, like 7 days out of the week. One thing about her is that nobody can say that she did not work hard, because she worked hard. But the thing is, I think because she worked so much, that it took away from her being a mother that she was supposed to be and that she said that she would be. Because, like I said, I felt betrayed, and I wish I had a good relationship with her, because I felt like she adopted me legally. She gave me clothes and she gave me food and she made sure I had a bed to sleep on. But to be honest, that wasn't enough. I was looking for security. I was looking for love. I was looking for respect, but I wasn't receiving that. And to not receive that from a person that gave you a second chance at life, it's a punch in the stomach, because it's like, why did she adopt me if she's not going to, love me, and if she's not going to respect me? Because I'm telling you this from my experience, I never felt like I was truly loved by her. And I'm going to say this too, I never felt like I actually genuinely loved her, because I know what love is. I never felt true love until I met my husband and had my kids. And I want to say this too. I dealt with a lot of stuff, and I'm going to say this is that I think throughout the years of me growing up and me learning about myself, I have learned how to be extremely patient. I have learned how to, not to beat myself up about what happened to me, because I used to like believe every single thing that mom used to tell me, um, which is not good, because it made my mental state not good. And I stopped believing everything. I'm still, I haven't fully healed. I don't think any of us adoptees really healed, but I think me talking about this for the first time with Brittany, and then I'm working on my book, I think it's a way of me healing for the first time ever. And writing the book has been a hard but good experience, because it's like I'm writing a book about my life and, about everything I went through. But at the same time, I do need to get everything out, because I have learned how to stay quiet and how to not, you know, say anything when I should be saying something, because I have always been taught to stay silent. So I just stuck with that attitude. And I am thankful for the things that Brittany, Joy, and Andy did with me, because let me tell you, I was Brittany's little magnet. I followed her everywhere I went. I did love the fact that she was always doing my hair. That was a way of me bonding with her on the weekends, even though it took forever. But I love the fact that I was able to hang out with her, regardless if she had somebody over or if she was on the phone. I just wanted to be with her. And then with Joy, she always took me out on weekends somewhere different. Like, she took me to a zoo, she took me to air shows, she took me on the train, she took me to parks. She had me experience different foods. Like, it was fun. And then with Andy, I had like a annoying relationship with him in a sense of like we would always argue and play fight. And then, like, for example, there was one time where we were fighting over lemonade pitcher, and I think it was during the time when we had that big yard sale, and we were fighting over a lemonade pitcher, and I accidentally like hit my, I don't know exactly what happened, but I ended up going to the hospital because my thumb got sprained or broken to a point where they had to put me in a little whatever you call it, cast or whatever it was. And they asked me how it happened, and I just said, "Oh, I just hit my hand against the railing." And the only reason why I said that because I was scared to get in trouble and I was scared for Andy to get in trouble. So I never even made a peep out of me getting hurt. I think in overall, I am beyond blessed and thankful for the life I have, even though there are times where I feel frustrated and just, I think mostly frustrated with with the new information that I found out about my biological um family. But other than that, I think that it's good for me to express on how I feel about, being adopted, and, how it has impacted me throughout me growing up. So I do appreciate you, Brittany, doing this because it is a process of healing. And I think all of us adoptees should be able to heal and should be able to share our stories without feeling like we can't. And for the longest, I felt like that. You and I, we've talked about it. And I'm just always worried about other people's feelings and emotions, where I'm kind of hiding my emotions and feelings because I'm so worried about others. And I need to stop worrying about others. But in overall, I think I am feeling blessed and thankful for the life I have now.